I'm optimizing on my hitbox right now. Turn your eyes away, Art. Don't look. Don't listen. I had a girlfriend who got me a Hitbox and a Razer Panthera, both for a birthday one year. And as an absolute beginner with both, I had such a harder time playing the box than I did playing the stick. Sorry, that just sounds a little sexual to me. But anyways, good point. I think stick is way more intuitive than Hitbox. Hitbox is not intuitive. That's why I always say like it has a higher skill ceiling. People go, oh my God. Oh yeah, higher skill ceiling, they rag on you for the easy stuff. But it does. There's some shit that's free out of the gate, but Hitbox is not intuitive. It is not intuitive. And also there's a lot more things to know because there's a lot more context situational things to do with Hitbox. So to optimize and use all the shortcuts available, you have to understand like what situation am I in? What is my beginning input when I'm in this context? And then what shortcut can I take advantage of to lead into my end goal, right? With stick, that does exist on stick and exists on pad, of course. Like those things all exist in every peripheral you use. But I really feel like a Hitbox has more of that than stick, by far. And stick is easy to visualize, easier to intuitively get. Like there's a lot of situations where stick just makes sense. It's an analog physical action, and you can easily map your brain to like the motions on the stick. Like it's quick to compartmentalize the motions and the shapes that they produce, right? Whereas Hitbox is a bunch of fucking buttons. But anyways, none of that matters for deciding if something should be banned or not, right? Like what decides that is going to be some kind of like some kind of ruling that is objective. That's what would decide if something should be banned. So saying something is harder or easier, that's not good logic, right? But I think that's just to dampen the flames of people calling Hitbox cheating or for being free, because it's just objectively like not true, right? Like, but I agree that's not good logic for deciding if that should be why you ban something. Because it's difficult doesn't mean it should be banned. It shouldn't be banned just because it's difficult. That's not good logic. But I would just say, what is the logic? Like I can't follow a logic for banning it. Besides, it's not what I feel. It's not what I like. Because the only objective ruling, like, okay, if you have problems with SOCD stuff, right? In my opinion, get rid of SOCD from the hardware level entirely and let the games decide. And the games do decide, right? In Street Fighter V, with Hitbox, you hold down, and if you press jump at the same time, it's going to turn that into an up input at the hardware level. The stick is going to send up instead. But if my stick instead didn't do that and it sent down and up at the same time, what the game at the software level in Street Fighter V, it'll turn that to up also. Now, the one that's different is left and right. If I do left and right at the same time, my Hitbox at the hardware level here turns that into neutral, right? If I were to send left and right at the same time to the game would actually option select forward. It would just choose to hold forward. That way you couldn't block cross-ups without, by cheating, right? So if I did both these at the same time, in this instance, it would give me right. If Akuma jumped over my head, it would start giving me left. And I would be holding left and right the entire time at the hardware level, right? So the opponent jumping over, I would always be walking towards the opponent no matter what. That's what the game does. And if I mapped a keyboard and demonstrated that for you, you could see that, right? So the game already has logic to handle this. Now, for some reason, in the CPT rules, they said that they made the rules like if you do left and right, it should be neutral, and you're allowed, if you do down and up, it can be neutral or up. That's what the rules say. You can read through the rules on the CPT website, which I don't know, which is weird because left and right neutral is the opposite of what the game does, or it's not what the game does. The game actually decided to let it go forward. So as a hardware developer, you are required for CPT legality to make left and right be neutral, which in turn lets you do weird shit like this. It lets me do this weird super shortcut where I hold forward. All three buttons gives me down because left, right is neutral. So down is what comes out here. And then I can do forward, down, forward, down, forward. If I start from down, it's down, forward, down, forward. Now, if you put that all together, it gives you super. Because the input leniency in this game is super free. All you need is a down, a forward input, a down, and a forward input. And if I can do it perfectly clean, which is, it's hard to do it perfectly clean, you would see only 4 inputs. but I keep hitting diagonal on accident because I'm a human, right? So that's just the input engine. I could technically do that on pad, but most of the time on pad, I would probably end up hitting the diagonal. Now, if this shortcut, left and right being neutral, didn't exist, and we let the game decide, I would be holding forward the whole time, right? Which will obviously cause other kinds of shortcuts from this kind of situation, right? But my point is, the game already has logic to handle SOCD, simultaneous opposing cardinal directions, right? Cardinal directions, left, right, up, down. Those are cardinal directions. They're simultaneous at the same time, and they're opposing, they're opposite, right? So we already have logic for handling that. Pad has logic for handling that, and pad can actually input at the same time. You can take a pad, I can input down on my pad and up on this D-pad at the analog stick at the same time. I can do that right now. I can do left and right at the same time. I'm already allowed with the default pad to input these directions at the same time. It reads both these directional inputs. So at the software level, it already handles this. So pad already has SOCD problems involved with it. I can do all these types of tricks on pad. It's just a little harder to do. It's sloppier to do. It's not as practical because you had to use this thing over here at the same time, right? So what is your metric? Is your metric, does it have SOCD problems? If that's your metric, then pad should be banned. Pad should be banned. You should not be able to use a device that allows you to input simultaneous opposite cardinal directions. Pad lets you do that. Hitbox lets you do that, right? So what's your logic? If you follow that logic, pad is out the window. Boom. Which we don't want to do. We want to include pads. It would be asinine and impractical to ban pads, right? So what's your other logic? Well, the other thing people say is, oh, well, it's really fast. It's really fast. I can very quickly do this. Perfect flash can get charged, right? I can easily, I have more precise charge timing, right? Because of the SOCD stuff, which we already went over, has to happen. I can do shortcuts. So what is the logic there? The only objective logic I'm seeing is you can do the directions very quick. That becomes the logic. So then your metric is you're gonna put a ban on speed. You're gonna like put a speedometer on how fast you can input directions. Because on stick, the problem is for me to go from right to left, I gotta move this stick from right to left physically, right? With this one, it's like almost instantaneous. So is your beef the speed of the inputs? So how do you objectively measure that? What if I go on my pad and I go and I wiggle around? Pad inputs are way faster than stick. If you're going by stick metrics, you know, stick's the geezer. Pad has been blowing past stick for years, for decades. So what objective ruling are you going to use to ban a controller? To me, I just think there needs to be. I think the objective thing to do is have no SOCD cleaning on hardware, have one input per direction, and leave it at that, right? Just leave it at that. Like I just feel like no matter which way you break it down, like there's no objective ruling you can do for Hitbox that does not ban pad. I honestly, I'm failing to see the argument, and I haven't seen a good argument. And I totally understand the feeling of it all, which is why I've been saying, hey, I've been trying this, and there's some shit that I don't like Hitbox for, and I think it's inferior for, right? Because the thing is, like, I don't care how good people get at the game, and like, if they break the game using Hitbox, to me, I'm thinking forward. Developers need to consider Hitbox in the future with their input reading systems and with their design philosophy and their balancing. That to me is what needs to happen. We need it all done at a software level, right? And like I just don't see any logic for banning it besides feeling. They feel like this is wrong. And I get that. Like culturally, I get that. And you might not like the balancing decisions that come about that because of arcade stick, right? Like I love playing on arcade stick. I love it, but I'm trying to fight emotion with emotion. Try it. Hitbox for some things is fucking stupid hard. Do this combo. Do that combo. That is so easy on arcade stick, and I'm about to give myself tendinitis trying to do this on Hitbox. Do that combo. That is so fucking hard. You know, because like you keep down back for charge, and then you make your decision later on in the string to do a half circle back. So you hold down back to keep your charge, and then you need to switch to forward, down, down back, back, and then button from this position, all in the timing of a jab cancel window. That is very, very difficult, which is, once again, that's not a metric for making any kind of ruling or decisions. Difficulty is not what you would do for that, but I'm just trying to get you on the emotional level, right? However, I do think for implication considerations, you do need to consider difficulty, right? Consider difficulty for implications of what these things mean. People act like Hitbox is going to change everything. It's not. Some of this stuff is very difficult, and having difficulty in execution modifies your mental stack. It does impact your gameplay, even at the highest level. Even the best player in the world is impacted by difficulty of execution of something. The more you have to think about something, even if you get really fucking good at it, it's still mentally taxing more. It requires more thinking. There's a reason why we leave executionally demanding things in games and don't eliminate them entirely. And I think that's another component, is people are saying, oh, this is eliminating executional challenges. Sure, you could say that this is not how a super should be inputted, right? It should not be this easy to input a super. And then I can say that's your feeling, and that may or may not be valid, but what the input engine is telling me is down, forward plus punch, that's super. That's what the input interpreter is telling me. I don't have any feeling about this. It says that's what it is. And if I want to use a controller that lets me do that more accessibly versus and sacrifice accessibility to other things, such as doing half circle backs from jab, then that's a strategic choice that I made. If this is not how the game is meant to be played, then the developers will have to develop around this. If it's that big of a deal, if having access to super like this is that big a deal, but having access to flash kick like that is that big of a deal, right? To me, then the developer needs to, in the future, update their games. This is a question on, this is a hardware test, or sorry, this is a software problem being paraded as a hardware issue, is how I feel. I think the argument stands more for retro games. Retro games legitimately get bonked by a lack of SOCD cleaning. So I think retro games would have to have rules around SOCD cleaning on hardware. But I think for any modern active game, just let the developers decide. Have one input direction for one input per direction, no macros. Like, and remember, people were saying macros on Twitter. That's another thing I've been hearing, macro. This is not a macro. This is not a macro. SOCD is not a macro. A macro is when you press one button and two different inputs come out. So no matter where I press on this controller, I press one button and one input comes out, right? No matter where I press. There is no macros. That is not what is happening. I guess I can give credence to people thinking that SOCD cleaning is maybe you're making a logical jump that left plus right equals neutral is a macro. Maybe you have beef with SOCD cleaning at its core. That's the only thing I can think. Like I'd have to use my brain a little bit to think if this counts as a macro or not. I don't think it does off rip without thinking too deep about it. But it's not a traditional macro. It's not I'm pressing one button and getting two actions. But like I said, I'm of the opinion the software should tell me what to do here. The software should be deciding. If this hitbox did not have an SOCD cleaner, which is the required implementation by CPT rules, by requirement under the CPT rules, left plus right must equal neutral. Even though in the game, if I were to force left plus right, it would give me forward. This is Capcom's ruling here. So there's also that to keep in mind. We're having all this debate. It's already been settled for Street Fighter. I don't know if other games with big developer-driven tours have any rulings on that stuff or not. So yeah, you know, I always called Hitbox cheatbox, but I was always kind of joking, like acknowledging its advantages while cursing the kids for you know, getting with the times while I fell behind. But now I realize there's like legit people who legit think it's cheating. And I was like, oh, I was doing a bit. You guys are serious? You guys are serious? I was just jealous. You know, when you're jealous of someone, you make fun of them because you're insecure and you want to put them down to make yourself feel better. That's what I was doing. I thought that's what everyone was doing. Or maybe they still are. Maybe they're so committed to the bit they haven't realized it yet. Yeah, I watch all of Eris's rant. I just disagree with him. I disagree with him because to me, his main argument boils down to it makes cheating easier. His opinion, which his opinion is totally valid. I agree with the opinion of fighting games should be played on stick. I get that opinion. I get it. I just don't think it's practical. I think it's gatekeeping and will hurt the FGC in the long run. And I think that floodgate, that it's been blown wide open the moment consoles became tournament standard, right? So I think that's never coming back. So that's not even a thought in my head anymore. But I do agree that stick is that's the way to play a fighting game. I agree with that. I get it. But a lot of his argument came down to it's easy to cheat on Hitbox, which I'm just saying, even in his discussion, it's easy to cheat on pad. It's easy to cheat on an arcade stick. Cheating to me is having a macro. You press one button and then it does two things. Two or more inputs, right? That's what a macro is at minimum. That's easy to do anywhere. So I don't understand his thing about like, oh, the SOCD implementation could be different in the hardware level. Like, yeah, it could be. You're not wrong. But I could also modify my pad to have a different direction anywhere. I could modify I have extra buttons on my arcade stick. What if I'm playing arcade stick, I'm holding down back and I modded a jump button on my arcade stick, like a cross up, and then I did perfect flash punches like that, right? Like who's to say I can't do that? So what's the argument there? The argument is like this cheatbox is tempting you to cheat more because cheatbox is in the name. It doesn't hold water to me. So you have to tell me, what about this control scheme is cheating? Is it the SOCD stuff? Get rid of it. Let the software decide. Right? Get rid of it. And if it's allowing multiple directions at once, this guy allows multiple directions at once. So unless you want the ruling to be any non-console peripheral, like a non-default console peripheral must not allow SOCD inputs, then that would have to be the ruling. You'd have to make an exception for pad and then ban everything else. But I really feel like that's just a terrible decision because you're limiting people with accessibility issues. I know plenty of players personally who have had to switch to a leverless style controller to save their hands. I think this fucks with my hands way more than stick. I don't like the layout personally too much. I don't know. I'm supposed to like play like I'm, you know, tap dancing with my fingers or something. I don't know. I don't love the way this makes my hands feel. I'm still figuring that out. Stick is way more comfortable to me. But I know players. Alex Myers switched to like a weird... Have you seen Alex Myers' stick? It's not even a stick. He has a lump. He has a thing. It's a plastic mold. It has a hill, and it's like he's pondering his orb. This is how he plays. He ponders his orb, and he plays like this. And then Ultra David, his is a split box. It comes apart, and he stands up with his lederhosen, right? And he stands up, and it has his straps like he's putting on his overalls, and he stands like this. Stands up like this in place. And that's because their hands exploded, and they have to do it, right? So do you want them to not play fighting games? It's like, I just don't really understand. Like, to me, the only argument is they must say never allow a controller with opposite SOCD inputs, which this does. Then you add an exception for pad because it's what comes with the console for accessibility. But then at the same time, you're denying accessibility to people with hand issues. So it's like you're still the logic for allowing this accessibility. Then you ban this, but the same logic for accessibility can be applied to this. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I just feel like shut the fuck up. I don't know. That's where my mind's going. And let the developers figure it out. Let the developers figure it out, man. We're getting close to Street Fighter 6. We're getting close to Tekken 8. We're getting close to the new generation. Let them consider this. Where did all this controversy even start? People have been playing Hitbox for years. Well, Hitbox exploded again in popularity because Evo, people are bored, right? There's a lot of it's like the end of the season for a lot of people. So they don't have any big tournaments coming up after Evo. So a lot of people are experimenting with Hitbox. Snackbox exploded in popularity and had a huge presence at Evo as well. And half of Street Fighter V top 8 used Hitbox or leverless style controllers. And then, you know, Hitbox has been circulating, getting into the hands of people like me as well. I put out some YouTube videos trying it out. So I think it's just all the perfect storm right now of everyone getting all their hands on a Hitbox or a leverless controller, and it's because it's downtime. We're waiting between big events in the FGC right now, so it came back up again. Isn't Snackbox the thin Hitbox like controller? Yes. So the control scheme, I think the terminology has been decided on leverless, which I don't think is a great way to determine that, because this doesn't have a lever, right? I don't think this is not what this is. Leverless, like defining something by what it lacks is often kind of a bad definition, because, okay, it doesn't have a lever. It could be anything else in the universe besides a lever. But that's what people have been saying, leverless. So stick int controller, yeah. all button, leverless. Have you experienced a change in opinion since playing it? My only change in opinion since playing Hitbox is realizing I think certain things are less practical on it. Nothing else has changed, because even before playing on Hitbox, I never really cared about Hitbox like that. I always just thought, man, to me, anyone who's quickly adopts something to be more optimal, whether it be switching to a top tier character or switching to a brand new control scheme to get to be more optimal, I always respect the fuck out of that, because it's something that I don't do. I don't very quickly change gears and get with the times, right? I've never been like that. So, you know, like people like Chris CCH and Kami, they play top tier. They switch quick. They play Hitbox. You know what I'm saying? They just get with the time. The youngins, they're doing what it takes to be cheap as fucking to win. And the boomers are crying about the times changing and not, you know, it's the same mentality. And I really respect people who do that. I really respect that, because it's hard. It takes time. You have to be worse for a long time. You have to go on the path less traveled. You have to abandon what you know, take a risk, and see if it pays off when we all have limited time on this earth. We have limited time in a competitive season. We have limited time before that patch comes out. We don't know if investing in that top tier character is going to be worth it, because they might nerf it before you even get a win, right? Are you going to take a season of L's while you're learning the new thing? You're learning the new controller, you're learning the new character, right? It's a risk. Even though you know the end goal is more optimal, more beneficial, there's a risk involved with that, right? So I've always been 100% respectful, and I've always admired people who took that leap. Always admired that. So with Hitbox, to me, it was the natural extension of, damn, that's crazy. You can do some crazy stuff on that. Cheap box, right? But good shit. That's what I thought, always. So since playing it, I've come to realize, not only to me, I could be wrong, but I think even in the end goal, I still think there's going to be stuff that's easier on here. There's still going to be stuff that's easier on arcade stick. So I think overall, Hitbox is more optimal for movement and stuff like that, but I still think there's going to be corner scenarios where things aren't easy, right? There's pros and cons. There's pros and cons. So that's what I mean from like a competitive player standpoint. No, I know I got to give it more time, but I've already gotten extremely comfortable with many aspects of Hitbox. So what I'm saying is, I could be wrong, but my opinion is I can already see just the amount of effort you have to do to execute certain inputs. It's less ergonomic, it's less optimal than arcade stick. That's what I'm saying. I can kind of make that conclusion that certain things require more dexterity, more focus, more mental energy to execute than on stick. They'll be doable consistently, I think, in the long run, yes. But I still think it's going to take more effort. Whereas if I say I was a Hitbox only player, for example. Okay, picking up Hitbox, I was like, wow, you can do super like this? If I only played Street Fighter on Hitbox, I think I would go to arcade stick and do this and be like, wow, you can do that easily on arcade stick? You get what I'm saying? I think if the roles were reversed, I would switch to stick, and there would be certain things where I'd be like, wow, that's cheating. wow, you can just do that? You know? That's what I'm getting at. But I think there's more situations where hitbox is beneficial than not. I think there's a small minority of situations where hitbox is less optimal. But I'm not the perfect person to ask for this. I'm still learning. Oh, stick is way more intuitive. I think if a beginner had either, I think a beginner would learn hitbox maybe a bit faster than someone who's only played on stick. But I feel like for beginners, you get one a stick, one a hitbox. I think a stick person might get a few things better or faster than hitbox. But some things on hitbox aren't that bad. Like a quarter circle, I don't know. I feel like a quarter circle kind of makes sense, which requires more dexterity. Probably hitbox overall. Yeah, some people play keyboard. I don't play mouse and keyboard games, so a lot of this is like me learning how to play on the keyboard. I hate playing on keyboard. But like this sequence, like me doing jump cancel stuff, during this sequence, I'm holding up with my thumb and I'm holding down back at the same time. This was very brain bending for me. I'm holding up and down back at the same time, which gives me up back. And then I press my medium kick while I'm on the ground early during the buffer window. Then I release my thumb to get rid of the jump. And then I do my charge move. So you see, this is very like brain bending. So I do, what do I even do? Do medium kick while holding jump. And then I let go of it. It's so strange. So this sequence, while I'm on arcade stick, so I'm holding, during this input, I'm holding down back jump button. Then I press medium kick, then I let go of the jump button. So my up back immediately shifts to down back. And then after I release my thumb, then I let go of my ring finger. I let go of my ring finger and go to forward, right? So I let go of my thumb, then I let go of these two buttons and go forward. Thumb, release forward. Release thumb, release these forward, right? It's such a weird input to wrap my brain around. And I compartmentalized it and I got it, right? I got it down. I can do that, right? But on arcade stick, you hold up back, up left, and then you circle around to forward. You trace the circle. Up back, and then you press your button and you go whoop, and you whip it around and hit forward. You just trace the gate, right? It makes sense geometrically. It's like drawing a circle, right? But this, I had to sit here and go, okay, this input, then this input, then this input, right? I had to map it out and reconfigure my brain to get it. And there's no intuitiveness in like the order I'm moving my fingers. It's like this thumb comes up and these fingers come up and this one goes down, right? There's no geometry to it. It's just less intuitive. So stick has those moments where it just makes sense. You got shapes, you got circles. I know what a circle is. I can map my brain and my input to a circle. Hitbox does not have that. But that's just a learning curve issue. Yeah, I haven't played any grappler stuff, so I have not experimented at all with the SPD stuff. I can't imagine that that's a walk in the park, but you can still do 720s and all that on Hitbox for sure. So what you're really saying is piano players or top tier hitbox users, they'll have the dexterity for sure, but I still think piano mapping in your head, it has a geometry to it. You go left to right. CFN is down right now, server maintenance. Anyways, that was my hitbox rant.